Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Katie McQuaige-Lucas, the ministerial intern here, and my pronouns are she and hers. Today, we're going to take a look at some highlights of the church year, and then Reverend Hank and I will talk a little bit about what we've learned or what we might take out of this year. As the wheel of the year turns, it's natural to find ourselves looking behind us as well as looking ahead. And this has been a year like no other. But even though we are separated in space, we are together in our experiences, in our community, and in our love for one another. So come in from the cold winter day into the shelter of warmth and love that we build here. Come in and let us worship together.
In the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, we gather this day. May the flame we now kindle be to us a symbol of the holiness we seek.
You're Unitarian, Universalist, the true no open mind, loving heart, and helping hands.
Good morning. I'm Mary Cunningham, the music director here at UU Reading, and we've got some great hymns for you today, both with Scottish heritage. The first one we're about to sing is Now Is the Time Approaching, and the words are by 19th century Scottish author Jane Laurie Bothwick. And she wrote these very hopeful, very applicable to these times text, and she set it to, her words have been set to a very familiar tune by Englishman George Webb, who is an organist also in the 19th century, trained at Salisbury Cathedral, but headed over to America and ended up with a gig at Old South Church. But on his way, he composed this song while aboard the ship heading to Boston, and it's a familiar tune. So please sing with me this great old song, Now Is the Time Approaching. Now is the time approaching, by prophets long foretold, when all shall dwell together, secure and manifold. Let war be learned no longer, let strife and tumult cease. All earth a blessed garden, and God the God of peace. Let all that now divides us remove and pass away, like mists of early morning before the blaze of day. Let all that now unites us more sweet and lasting prove, a closer bond of union in blessed lands of love. O long expected dawning, come with your cheering ray. Yet shall the promise beckon and lead us not astray. O sweet anticipation, it cheers the watchers on to pray and hope and labor till all our work is done.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Hank Purse. My pronouns are he, him, and his. Let's open our hearts in prayer. Spirit of life and love, be with us this day. Keep our hearts and minds open to receive your love and peace. Enable each of us to be the people of joy and hope as we encounter others. During this holiday time, may we pray for all who are hungry and homeless, at the very time when others will be enjoying good food and the warmth and comfort of home. We think of those who have fallen through the safety nets, who've lost their job and security in their lives. We give thanks for those staffing food banks and working to provide comfort to others. We think of those who feel empty and unwanted. And we ask that through loving actions, they may be shown your everlasting love, and that through our actions, they may find the support that they need at this time. On the Sunday after Christmas, we hold those in our community who are isolated and feeling lonely. We also hold up in our prayers Cynthia Lawler, the mother of our colleague, who and she fell and had to have reconstructive surgery. Thou grant that we may live this day in stunned response to your unrelenting and reckless love, and grant us favor as we head into this new year. And this we ask in the name of all the prophets known and unknown, remembered and forgotten. Amen, and blessed be. The role of the minister is at times to ask for outrageous sums of money. And this is one of those Sundays. Last Sunday of the tax year, for those of you who are counting at home, each week since November of last year, we have been sharing our plate, sharing the money that comes in on a Sunday morning with different nonprofits. This month, we have been sharing it with Everytown for Gun Safety, an organization which started in 2013 to ensure safe and legal gun policies and sane gun policies all across our country. If you've never given to our church before, you can go to the church's website, and there's a button right there where you can pledge. Not just pledge, but to give for today. For those of you who know how to give and have been giving regularly, thank you. And you already know how to do this. The offering will now be given and gratefully received. In last Wednesday's Boston Globe, Renee Graham talks about how Queen Elizabeth had to resort to Latin to describe what she considered one of their most difficult times in her life. She wrote, the Queen said, in 1992 has been a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure. It's turned out to be annus horribilis. No doubt, most of us would not have to resort to Latin to describe this year. It was awful. And of course, it wasn't the calendar year that was bad. It was the pandemic. And as Graham points out, it was the ruthless efficiency of a broken system operating exactly as designed to enrich the wealthy and crush everyone else. She goes on to give it to, she really does give it to the selfish and to President Trump and his lackeys who made a bad situation even worse for their own self-serving needs. Amazingly, we have gone on. People have been there for each other, calling and writing notes, gathering online to check in and check up and cheer up each other whenever we have the chance. This pandemic, as you know, has prevented us from showing our love for each other in the ways we normally do, with meals and hugs and long conversations. But people, I've discovered, are truly amazing, and they're also imaginative. In a Zoom call that happened earlier this year, one of our church members shared that in the afternoon they were going to go visit their granddaughter, and taking a cue from another friend, they were going to bring a bed sheet. And when they saw their granddaughter, they were going to drape that bed sheet over her so they could finally give her a hug, something they hadn't been able to do for months. It was brilliant and funny, and I have to admit that I imagined someone hugging Charlie Brown in his Halloween getup. And at the same time, I could physically feel my own body yearning to hug those whom I have been physically separated from. It has been a horrible year, and in the face of it, we may do, which is truly a blessing. As you've looked back on this year, Katie, what have you been thinking about?
I've been wondering lately how our experiences will show up in ways we can't even imagine right now, perhaps as long as decades down the road. When my grandmother was old, she started hoarding things. She would stash milk cartons and used aluminum foil all around her home. And my mother explained to me that my grandmother had grown up during the Great Depression, and she likely felt the need to cling to possessions and things. And I wonder how we'll talk about this era, how my nieces and nephews will explain Weird Aunt Katie, if I'll be neurotic about personal space or touching, if I'll wear masks and gloves at socially inappropriate times. There's been so much trauma this year in so many parts of our lives, and I know we won't see the full aftermath for a really long time. And I don't know how many of us are going to struggle with social interaction in the future. Will we feel anxious in public places? I also wonder if my nieces and nephews will grow up to be far more politically radical or even just more engaged than a lot of people in my own generation in the wake of the current political failures. Or maybe they'll be more cynical and disengaged. I think we've definitely seen this year how much voting really matters. The anarchists always say, oh, if voting mattered, they'd make it illegal. And in the past several years, that argument has been turned inside out. There have been so many assaults on voting rights. It turns out that voting must matter if there are so many efforts to prevent people from voting. I think we've all seen things this year that we can't unsee. We've seen all the cracks in our society, both in how the pandemic has played out physically, but also in how it's played out economically. We've seen which bodies are at greatest risk and why. But at the same time this year, I've seen so much that gives me hope. I'm a huge basketball fan, and I will always remember the moment that all of the teams refused to play to protest the shooting of Jacob Blake. And the media talked about it as a boycott, but it's really important that it was actually a wildcat strike. It was a labor uprising to draw attention to police violence, and that's incredible to me, that there was such powerful collective action performed out of solidarity to leverage the attention of all of us who were cooped up inside watching TV. When the shutdown first happened in March, all the little free libraries in my neighborhood became pantries for a little while, and some neighbors were just putting boxes of canned goods down on the sidewalks. People in the neighborhood organized shopping on behalf of their older neighbors. They organized childcare for essential workers, and it wasn't perfect. It was informal and ad hoc, and that kind of organization is always a little incomplete. But it means a lot to me that in times of crisis, so many people immediately responded with mutual aid and community care.
The other day with a pal who's a family counselor, I asked him what he thought, what do you think the long-term results of this pandemic will be on everybody? And he said what we've all been saying, that there will be trauma as the results of this pandemic. And he said there might even be a backlash against caring for each other. But he did think that people would return to some sort of emotional normalcy, but it would happen slowly. There's no easy fix to all this, once we all get our vaccines, going to a baseball game and to a parade isn't going to just solve everything. People need to feel safe, something that even those of us with jobs and homes and relationships may not really be feeling. We need to feel safe. People need to feel safe physically and psychologically and spiritually so they can mourn all that has been lost, because so much has been lost. I've had friends who've lost their jobs, and others who have lost their homes. We've lost the assumption that people have lost their assumption that their relationships are solid, or even that their kids are resilient. The good news through all of this is that none of us are alone. As much as our faith talks about the rights of the individual to make our own choices, we are bound together. We're bound together by a covenant that promises that we are going to walk together. I love that term. We're going to walk together. That is why we show up in person and online, to see each other's faces, to hear each other's voices, and eventually, soon, to hold each other's hands. It's the reason of cities and of homes and assemblies and the houses of worship. It's good to be with each other. I have a quote from Helen Keller that I just love. She wrote, "Once I knew only darkness and stillness. My life was without past or future. A little word from the fingers of another fell into my hand that clutched at emptiness. And my heart leapt for the rapture of living." Soon enough. What do you think is going to happen, Katie? What are you thinking about going ahead?
Going ahead. I think a lot of us are going to experiment and try to figure out what we want to take with us into this uncertain future time, how we want to live. I know for a lot of us, there's no going back. There's no rebuilding things exactly the way they were before. There have been all the political awakenings, but I think a lot of us have also gained some personal clarity. We've experienced a lot of pain in our disconnection. We've learned new ways to care for each other. I love that phrase, walking together. A lot of us have really rebalanced and restructured our lives. And so I wonder what new practices and ways of living will carry forward into 2021 and beyond. And I hope that translates across a lot of the areas of our lives. We've been rethinking how we work, how we're in relationship, how we live. And being forced to do that rethinking opened up a lot of possibilities. I think we'd lose a lot if we tried to rebuild exactly the way things were. I hope that changing up how we access work has opened up access to jobs for all kinds of people going forward, for example. I know that a lot of us in churches are thinking about all the ways we've learned to reach out and connect. And we don't want to go back to doing things the way we've always done them. We want to carry some of that forward. And I know that for me personally, my life has restructured dramatically. The past 2 years or so have been really intense with school, with work, with various internships, and I have spent hours and hours every week on trains. Now suddenly I'm at home a lot. It was like just this gift of time in the midst of all this other chaos. And it did come with a lot of isolation, but I've had so much more time to spend with my partner, Chris, and we've really enjoyed having that time together. I've had more time for self-care, for things like cooking. And I've also been forced to be really intentional with how I connect with friends and family, instead of doing that thing where I just rely on my schedule to make things happen. And well, I'm at school on Tuesday, so I'll see all my friends. No, now I have to call people. And so I'm hoping that when we're out and about and we can see each other and touch each other again, that I'll carry some of that intentionality forward, that I'll prioritize time for rest for myself, but also for connection with other people in a way that I hadn't been doing when my life was a lot more hectic. So I think that if we all look ahead into the future with some of the clarity we've gained right now, we can build something better than it was before.
Good morning. I am Melissa Martin, new Member Services and Volunteer Coordinator. My pronouns are she and her. This part of our service is called Our Congregational Life. What exactly is our congregational life? Well, here at UCR, we strive to build our spiritual community centered around our mission statement that declares, UUCR is a welcoming place to nurture and explore individual spirituality, build a committed and loving community, heal the world. We welcome all to join us. Each month, we share ways for you to do just that. And this is the time in our service where we lift up some of these opportunities. This week, before we usher in the new year, you can check our resource guide for virtual social hour opportunities on Wednesday and Thursday, and our men's group that will meet virtually on Saturday. Beginning next Sunday, January 3rd, new visitors and friends are invited to join me for a special new visitor welcome. Each Sunday in January, we will welcome new folks in and consider how UUCR might play a role in helping you to explore your spirituality in the new year. This week, I have a few other upcoming opportunities that I think you'll want to plan for. Registration is now open for our second Beyond Ivy Court event of the year. Please join us on Saturday, January 9th, as we are treated to music, spoken word, and other theatrical-inspired performances that were recorded especially for this event by the college alumni and high school students from the Performing Project in Lawrence. Performances include an original song written by a Performing Project graduate who now attends the Boston Conservatory. Performers will join us to reflect upon their performances and to share their plans for the coming years. This event is suitable for people of all ages. Also, please plan to join us for the UU Common Read. A Common Read invites participants to read and discuss the same book in a given period of time. It is our hope that the UU Common Read will build community in our congregation by giving us a shared experience, shared language, and a basis for deep, meaningful conversations. This year's UU Common Read reinforces our commitment to follow through on our Black Lives Matter resolution of the governing board of the Unitarian Universalist Church, which was signed on June 17th of this year. The UU Common Read for 2021 is Imani Perry's Breathe, a letter to my sons. So grab your copy today and join us for the discussion of Breathe that will kick off a series of conversations about anti-racism and anti-oppression work. To accommodate various schedules, each discussion session will have 2 dates, one on a Sunday afternoon and one on a Monday evening, and congregants are invited to attend whichever date best suits their needs. We'll discuss this book, Breathe, on January 10th at noon and January 18th at 7 p.m. Finally, you are invited to a new offering, Cozy and Crafty Fun. We welcome anyone 18 or over to join in every second and fourth Monday evening beginning January 11th. If you craft, color, crossword, or simply want to doodle, do that thing that you do while you hang out with us twice a month. There are no requirements or expectations of any kind. This might even be an excellent time to make a shawl or a lap blanket for UCR Shawl Ministry, providing a handmade hug to those in our community who need it. However you decide to nurture and explore your individuality and your spirituality, build our committed and loving community, or help to heal the world, we are so glad that you're doing it here with us. Thank you for being a vital part of our congregational life.
Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and days o' lang syne? For old lang
And now it is time for us to extinguish our chalice for the last time in 2020. You are invited to join in saying the words we say each week. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts. Happy New Year, everybody.
I will repeat for us Helen Keller's words. A little word from the fingers of another fell into my hand that clutched at emptiness, and my heart leaped to the rapture of living. May you know the rapture of living in the week to come, in the month to come, in the year to come. And may you be blessed and find peace and joy in it. Go in peace.